Welcome to the Dark Zone, an adventure racing podcast.
Okay, you people sit tight, hold the fort, and keep the home fires burning. And if we're not back by dawn, call the president.
You're going the wrong way!
What?
You're going the wrong way!
He says we're going the wrong way.
Oh, he's drunk. How would he know where we're going?
Yeah, how would he know? Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Welcome to the Dark Zone, an adventure racing podcast. This is your host, Brian Gatens. I am joined today by the race director of Expedition Ozark. I have Danny Collins and Jason Bettis. They are putting on the first version of Ozark, happening in Bentonville, Arkansas, this coming April. They're kind enough to come on the Dark Zone. So, Danny, before we talk about the race, before we talk about anything about the terrain or the not-so-scary caves, who are you? What's your experience? What brings you to adventure racing?
Yeah, well, I appreciate it so much having us on the show and talking about the race. Just incredibly excited to join this amazing family. Yeah, my background's I grew up here in the Ozarks. I ended up after school moving out to New York City, and so kind of living in the land of concrete, needed to get out. Got into the marathon running, led into the Ironman types of situations, and then kind of found adventure guiding in a lot of ways to kind of be that kind of just fill my itch in a lot of ways. And so got a chance to lead a lot of cool day trips in the Northeast, and then got a chance to start to kind of get into the world of mountaineering through adventure guiding. I led some trips to Kilimanjaro and some of the different places in the Andes. And long story short, that actually led me to made a pretty big career change and took a job with National Geographic and was the expedition manager at one of their unique lodges of the world down in South America. And ran this lodge for a little bit. And then about 4 years ago, I moved back to the Ozarks, moved back home for family reasons. My father became very ill. And so we moved back to be with him through that. And that's when I reconnected with Jason after quite some time. And I had been doing some adventure racing here and there for about 12 years now ago, I think was my first race with Jason. But it had a lapse. But the past 4 or 5 years since I've been back, we've been kind of pushing it pretty hard together. And so my introduction to adventure racing specifically is completely through Jason. And so it's really fun to get to kind of shift out of just racing with him and actually start to kind of think about the logistics from race directing with him.
Yeah, and to that point, Jason, we'll come to you in a second. There are so many adventure racers who during a race are fascinated by the creation of the race and then in turn create their own races, right? That's very often a common path to becoming a race director. So thank you. And Danny, thank you very much. So Jason, welcome to the Dark Zone. Glad you're here. Walk us through your experience.
Thank you, Brian. I'm happy to be here. My experience getting into adventure racing started when I was at a boot camp class. Fitness class. Somebody mentioned a race coming up and had heard me say something about using a topographical map in the area that I was hiking. And she asked if I would join and be their navigator. And so that was my introduction to it. It was a 6-hour race. It was based here in the Springfield, Missouri area. And I was addicted from day one. I've been adventure racing for the past 16 years. We have done a lot of races here in the United States. I've raced with Kuat for the past 10, 11 years and just have met a lot of great people. Had a lot of fun. Seen a lot of beautiful places. So I'm very excited to be on the Expedition Ozark team for sure.
Having done all the adventure racing over the years, Kuat, strong team, having the 16 years of experience, making the transition into being a race director is always a jump, right? Racer to director. Putting the race together, getting it organized. What have you really found to be the challenges that have come across there? What have you found to be the things that you want to tackle as a race director?
You know, what I really love is being on course in the woods. I navigate for our team. And so being out in the woods and getting from point A to point B and learning all of the lay of the land, what the land has in store. You know, it'll look a certain way on a topographical map, but when you encounter it, it's totally unique in its own perspective. So that is one thing that I bring. And, having done races for quite some time, I've always considered directing races, putting things together. There's been a lot of things that I really, really liked and some things that I'm like, yeah, okay, that was okay. But, so going into this race, that's the main objective, is to put things together that I think are going to flow well, that will challenge, and that will allow everybody to see the beauty of the Ozarks and have a challenging event.
Well, that's a great thing, right? Because as a racer, you say to yourself, if I ever directed a race, we're going to do it this way. And now this is the this way part of it. So,
right.
So Danny, what have you found in terms of transitioning from being a mountain guide and working in other countries and all that? In terms of being race directing, how is that going for you? Like, how do you find, are you comfortable with the course setting? I know you said that Jason's doing a lot of that, knowing the terrain. What skill do you think you're really bringing to the directing role right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think initially my role was that big picture design of just understanding that again, kind of, Jason used the right terminology that I would kind of, second is that flow, and just that big picture flow, the connection of these different spaces that we have, and connection by different activities, which is adventure racing. That's the core of it, is that you don't want to feel like you're just connecting a space kind of in a lazy manner, right? And so that's a big part of my initial. And now my job and what I'm really focused on is those what ifs, and then just that logistics. I mean, that's probably the majority of race directing in so many ways. It's where you want to place the checkpoints, but it's just planning for all the plan Bs and plan Cs, and let's be honest, Ds, Es, and Fs, and then also just really talking about just thinking about the logistics and the flow of the equipment. And we're going to have there's no doubt we're going to have a fast race here. And so that's one of the biggest issues for that we're kind of struggling through and fighting through is just that the estimations of time for us to do things behind the scenes while the race is actually going on, if that makes sense.
So speaking logistically, it's a 5-day race?
Correct. Yes. So 120 hours. 120-hour
race, right? So you have to 120 hours of time, and it's in the race site. The headquarters is out of Bentonville, Arkansas, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And so for folks who are listening to this from all over the world, talk a bit about Bentonville. Talk a bit about the terrain, the location. And I will share, Bentonville has really grown into quite the adventure destination over the last several years. There's been an incredible move towards the outdoors there. And I think there's a natural connection. The growth of Expedition Ozark in the shadow of Bentonville in and around makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I think, you're right. And Bentonville is it's a special place. And growing up here in the Midwest, it is such a very different place than it was even, especially 20 years ago, but even 10 years ago. The investment in outdoor recreation and kind of preservation of these spaces and the trails for being able to go explore them is just, it's unheard of. I think it's unlike anywhere else really in the world in a lot of ways. Because
of the combination of different disciplines that are available between the trekking, the mountain biking, and the water? Is that what makes it such a unique area?
Yeah, it is. Our cities and our kind of these bigger communities such as Bentonville are just stacked with trails, hardscape and tons of softscape. But then as soon as you get out, you hit some of the best terrain between the Rockies and the Appalachians, right? And so, and our rivers are, which there's no doubt that we'll be including some of our rivers in April, right? It's just the rivers are, in my mind, the life of the Ozarks, especially in the springtime. And but yeah, overall, I think that it's just made for a race like this. It really is in so many ways, that all these different places are connected by these water systems and by these long networks of trail systems. A lot of people don't know some of the incredibly long trail systems that we have in this region. So it really is made for that kind of showcase of everything you have here, and there's so many different ways to explore in so many different ways in that same exact region. And so, but yeah, you made a mention about it. It's going to be a fast-paced race. We have primo gravel here. The gravel biking scene is just incredible. And so between that and extremely well-manicured, flowy single track and some really amazing, fast-moving rivers in the month of April, we're going to have a really fun, fast race for people that's going to keep everybody moving, no doubt, all the time.
So, Jason, let me bring this next question over to you. Having raced with Kuat, never been in a variety of races. And I always have sympathy for race directors who come on the dark zone to talk about their races before they happen, because as we know, the race course itself is not disclosed until the race actually starts. So there's always that sense of minor panic on behalf of a race director that they're terrified they're going to say something and give something away in the course of the race. And if you did, it would never make it into the final edit. So listeners at home, tough luck. But let me turn to you, Jason, and ask you this. As someone who has raced with Kuat and has raced specifically in many other parts of the country and even parts of the world, if someone wanted to get ready for Expedition Ozark, right, if they wanted to prep themselves have a really, really strong experience, what recommendations would you make for somebody at home right now? It's December, the race is in April, the clock, ticks pretty quickly as you get to the race. What should people be doing right now for a good experience?
I would look at the terrain and see, are we flat? Do we have hills? And that would help to dictate how they're going to be training. So there will be a lot of fast movements, a lot of up and down, and so I would be sure to have my hill training in place.
Very nice. That's a good way to say something without actually saying it. So good job there, right? Be prepared to go up and to go down. Very nice. Well done. The race directors around the world are now nodding their head approvingly at the podcast. So good job that you did that. So Danny, coming back to you, if teams are coming into the race and the teams, you've had a good registration so far, logistically speaking, how does it work? How do you get into Bentonville? What does the travel look like?
Yeah, from domestic, we're situated really central, like almost dead center of the United States. So from a traveling in via vehicle, we are pretty convenient located for a lot of, especially these kind of Midwestern teams, but also especially from the Northeast side of the United States. Flying in XNA it's a smaller airport, but it does. I don't think anybody would be able to look up Bentonville and not understand that we are the home of Walmart. And so one of the advantages of that, beyond a lot of the money that they're actually flowing into being able to kind of put into these trail systems and that kind of thing, is also our airport has an unbelievable amount of direct flights, which is really a huge advantage. Right in, the airport's about 25 minutes. We're going to handle pickup for anybody that wants to fly in, and you won't need a vehicle at all. Our accommodation is going to be extremely well located for ability to go get what you need before and then to have the time you want to afterwards. And we'll help with the support to get you to and from the airport. I think we're about 5 hours of a flight from Dallas too. So there are some teams I think that are choosing to just fly in directly to Dallas and then taking a vehicle from there. But overall, relatively, it seems like the Midwest is somewhat daunting to get to these small towns, but we're a very accessible location for so many different reasons.
And so adventure racers are always expected to bring their mountain bikes with them, right? Bring your own bike. And I'm sure you could source one local, but we like our own bike. In terms of watercraft, is it a packraft based race? Will you be using kayaks? Like what should they be prepared for when it comes to the water sections?
Yeah, we're doing packraft for the majority of the race. There will be one other portion of the race that will have something else. But packraft, and one of the main reasons for that, it's not that we're looking to have, the only reason we're looking to is because there's some really, really amazing river systems that if we could connect outside of those very obvious public put-ins and takeouts, that it just makes for a way more unique experience. And so it's more for just creating that incredibly unique and just almost inspirational flow of the race. That's the main reason we're going with the packraft system.
The fact that a packraft can go into the water anywhere and not at a put-in and not on a dock, that traveling across terrain, and Eric Carvalho, to his credit, did the Eastern Mountain Wilderness Challenge this past year up in the Adirondacks, and they use packrafts extensively. I think what you're touching upon is the idea that regardless of the water, you could access it from anywhere you want with a packraft.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and river systems like ours especially are going to allow for very, like you said, unique points to put in, take out, and then also the options of potential portages, right? And so being really creative from a strategy, something that Jason and I talk about a lot, is that we want this race at all times to have multiple options, and that's what our terrain and land allows for. And a part of that is that Packraft plays a big role into the potential strategy options.
So that's actually an interesting point that you bring up when it comes to course design, and you're not giving away any state secrets. There are some races that the race starts here, right? And then the racers seem to have a drag race through the terrain, and they get to B, C, D, and eventually they get to the finish line, right? That's the way the race works. It sounds like what you're saying is that based upon what you have, and I want to come back to the water in a second because I'm curious about lakes versus rivers versus streams. What you're saying is that based upon the train that you have, the Packraft is a mode of transportation, and all of the travel options you have there with the by foot and by bike, that teams will have to make strategic on-course decisions during the race when it comes to what they have to get. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah. They're going to be strategic decisions on everything from the paddle, the trek, the bike. Yeah, the route they can take will be very variable. And as I'm kind of putting points out there, I see it and try it out, smile, and think, okay, I wonder I'd like to see the dot line, so it'll be fun to kind of look back and see what route each team took, to get to their checkpoints.
Yeah. And I think at Endless Mountains, one thing we noticed that during the Quahana Wild Forest part, the fact that teams could choose the direction they wanted to travel added a sense of speed to the race, where it wasn't like one team was in the front and the other team just had to run them down. There was a lot of strategic decisions there. Clearly, as you move through the separate stages, you're going to touch upon foot, bike, water. You've mentioned the fact that you mentioned the caves on Instagram, and we'll definitely mention your Instagram handle. Not the tight, scary caves. I on behalf of Adventure Racers, I thank you for that. Those are fun, but they're not fun. The terrain, the water terrain, basically, what is in and around Bentonville? And you're not giving any part of the course away. Do we see the wide flowing rivers that we're going to see? Do we see different classes of water? Do you see lakes? Like what are, if someone were to look at a map of Bentonville right now, right? Because that's what every team does. They go to the Google Maps, they go to Google Earth, and they begin guessing what's around. If somebody were to look at a map of Bentonville, what kind of water would they see?
Yeah, I think I don't think it would be a secret for anybody if you look at a map and which general direction we're probably going to be, leading racers, definitely. And that makes sense in a lot of ways. The greatest, I think, honestly, and I said this earlier, springtime in the Ozarks is the lifeblood is our moving water systems. We have such an incredible everything from, one of the and I'm not giving anything away. It may or may not be included, all of these truly. But, from the first ever national river is a very short distance of an hour drive from Bentonville. We have 4 or 5 other rivers that I can name on the top of my head that are just incredibly flowy in the springtime, right? Super rain dependent. Then we also have a couple larger river systems. And then we also have some that are kind of turned into that man-made lakes, right? And so we have lots of different small lakes to big lake systems that have been dammed, that are all in play, as well as, everything they could be. I mean, there are some rivers that hit class 3 on a very regular basis in springtime, right? And that's why April is the time to have an adventure race in Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah, that's great. And so clearly the teams have to get their paddles in their hands and get their boats underneath them to figure that out, because once again, no state secrets. You've mentioned the fact that there will be some moving water over the course of the race. We have to be there. Are you asking for any special certifications for the race, like wilderness first aid, any rope certifications, any of that?
Yeah, we are going to make a more public announcement about. Right now, we had talked about a wilderness first aid as being a mandatory certification, but we're actually going to lower that down to a CPR certification for an incredible amount of reasons. Again, that's one of those that we learned a lot from a lot of other race directors. Also, kind of when we started to really delve into the safety report and our safety plan. And then also just hearing feedback from interested and already registered teams. So we'll have a CPR requirement for the teamers, but the the old requirement of the wilderness race first aid is actually going to not be a thing anymore.
Gotcha. What's it like in terms of how remote does the train get down there? Will they be? We did a race one time, Untamed New England, where Grant Killian basically said, if your safety bearing is south, and walk that way for 2 days. Right? That's what he basically said during the race, which was terrifying when he said it. How remote is the train down there?
It's rather remote. There are some areas that are more remote than others. We have a very good safety team involved. They're working through all the avenues of assistance that may be needed. So that's one of the great things of the team that we have that's working together to allow those remote access or those remote locations to be accessible.
What does the safety team's role look like in December as you get closer to the race? What are the expectations do you have for them right now?
Yeah, it's really exciting. I mean, I think that's something that a lot of people don't know. Jason and I going into this as, relatively new on the race design side of things, we have surrounded ourselves very intentionally and just so very lucky we have a forum. We also have a safety team. And so we had a lot of people that come from an incredible amount of experience that are participating in this whole undertaking alongside us. But yeah, the safety team itself is we have three specific individuals. One of them is literally only focused on our water safety. In April, again, that's one of our biggest what ifs on that plan D, plan C, plan D, and EFG. And then as well as that remote access that Jason was talking about a little bit earlier is, we have there. We're crossing a lot, and I know every expedition level does, but we are crossing an incredible amount of different counties to incredible different AKA groups that would be the ones that would be directed if something were to go on. So we're trying to take a lot of that control in ourselves and have that be more or less, you might think of it as a private system instead of relying on some of these other systems, especially because we're crossing through so many different territories. Gotcha.
So to your point there always is the 911 option, which is the first buttons you should hit, right? If something were to happen, break open that phone and call 911. But on top of that, it sounds like you're entering a layer of protection being offered by the race organization itself. So Jason, correct. What's the weather going to be like in April? What's the variability there?
Oh, wow, so variable. It's going to be sunny and perfect temps.
Of course, it always is. And it won't rain, and it'll be sunny and 70 the entire time.
That's right. It can be variable. It can be a little chilly. It can be warm. We can have rain, or it could be dry. And it's just we just have to be prepared for everything that could potentially happen from a weather standpoint. I've always liked the 1st of April, though. I've always felt like that's a good time of year in this area. Always, fun things to do outside and don't have to worry too much about the weather.
Gotcha. At nighttime at elevation, what could it drop down as low as?
Oh, I mean, it might get down into the 40s, lower 40s, perhaps. And, in the daytime, it could get up in the 80s.
Okay. So typical adventure racing, prep yourself for that 40-degree swing, right? Like you may need a puffy at night when you're out there, especially if you're, thermal control, thermal regulation is a big word, right? And if you're out there and if you're pouring sweat and it's 40 degrees and you stop moving, you get cold pretty quick, right? You don't feel like it's 40 degrees.
Very quickly.
Yeah, one huge advantage that we have is we are going to experience a full moon, which is going to be extremely advantageous from so many different levels. And then it's also almost exactly 12 hours sunlight, right? It's almost 7 to 7 when it comes to sunrise, sunset, which are, it really, I think the potential fluctuation everybody needs to be able to plan for and be ready for is potentially intimidating, but there are other advantages of that time of year. It is before we start to get extreme blooms, and so therefore your visibility is really, really great. It's you're not going to have overgrowth and extreme vegetation that's quite starting to build up yet for our off-trail trekking sections. you also got that you're going to start to see some of what is the most special thing beyond, again, that moving water. That's the lifeblood. And that's one of the most special things about why we're choosing this time of year. But it's also, you start to get the dogwoods and the red buds and stuff. That is an exceptionally beautiful time where water brings the Ozarks to life in early April.
And it sounds like it's that cusp between winter, late spring going into the summer. So to your point, it's not like you're there in July and August when the undergrowth is strong and the brush is thick. So there'll be a lot of ability to see. And also with temperature swings like that, the bug situation might be minimal, right? How bad it gets. So it sounds like you very were thoughtful about picking the April date. Like you wanted that was the date that you were shooting for to bring the race on board. Did you consider any other times of the year?
We definitely have a very, very strong relationship with Brent Abbey and Jason and Chelsea, and wanted our date to make sense with the other North American races for sure in so many ways. And so that's vital to us as an organization, is that we want this to be nothing but an addition to the sport in general in North America. And so that was one of the very first things. Besides that, it was pretty mandatory, and at least in my mind, at least for the first year, and probably as many as we possibly can moving forward, to be in the springtime. Paddling is very important for lots of reasons for it to be spring. There are some areas that we wanted to incorporate that would be just kind of brutal in June and July with growth, and not places that I think we'd want to bring people, at least in the same capacity that we're confident bringing them in early April. So it was pretty much the first choice to be in that, that kind of like late winter, early spring moment, right? And
if you back up
month of
March,
April's great.
Right, because March, it gets a lot colder. March could be 30s at night, which changes everything. And if you go into to May and June, you're running into springtime, right? And then obviously, we have in the adventure racing community lately, we have an excess of riches, right? We have Expedition Oregon is taking a year off. Jason and Chelsea are still doing 9 other races, right? So Bend Racing is rolling on. Expedition Canada with Natalie Long, great race. Endless Mountains is back for round 2, Brent and Abbey. We just had a race come on board, La Ruta de Madre, down in Mexico's coming on. I think that's November that's coming on. And so we're having this growth. There's a race in Poland just came on. Like there's a lot of 5-day races that are growing up around the world. And credit to Heidi at ARWS for really sowing the seeds for all of these. And so you're right. You had to thread the needle between the calendar, what the calendar could endure, and you had to thread the needle with the weather. And so that's good on you guys for doing that. You mentioned that you cross a lot of different lines in terms of the forest you use. How has the permitting been like? What's it been like to work with the various local authorities and getting all of the necessary permissions, private land, public land? How challenging have you found that to be?
I'll talk that one because that's been mostly in my court for many different reasons. One advantage of owning a guiding service is that I already have some pretty structured relationships with almost every entity that we work with. I think like the headaches of just about any race of this capacity and any race structure would attest to, it's when you cross a lot, you've got to deal with a lot, and not all of them work in the same manner. That's one of the most frustrating things, is that everyone is a different relationship. But overall, Northwest Arkansas and Arkansas in general is just been fully on board with taking outdoor recreation as a extremely high priority. And so we're seeing that in this race, and seeing that everybody has this how can we help mentality. Everything from the national forest to the state parks are just been incredible to work with, even outside of just when we're on their land, if that makes sense, how they promote. Sure. That's one of the most special things about where we live, and why I love Northwest Arkansas, unlike any other place I've ever been or lived, is that kind of everybody is around, this is our thing, and this is what we want to be known for. And so that trickles into things like having great relationships and just figuring things out, such as permitting.
And on top of that, when you bring an international race into a community, the community realizes that they're introducing themselves to the rest of the world, and therefore they want to be good neighbors and they want to put that on. So it sounds like the permitting process has worked out pretty smoothly. Any private landowners, or is it mostly traveling through public lands?
Lots of private landowners too. Here we have some really, really great, exciting places that are privately owned as well. From some of the bigger landowners in the area to some of the adventure outfitter groups that exist and have existed for hundreds of years here, literally. So no, you're going to be crossing through both. We've been very lucky that there's not going to be a whole lot of X's on our maps. That's for sure.
Who's doing your tracking, by the way? Who's taking care of that for you?
Mark Harris.
Mark Harris, Adventure Enablers.
Mm-hmm.
And what's your media plan look like? Are you doing updates? Are you going to have a drone on the course? Are you bringing somebody in to do a daily? Like the ability for adventure race fans to dot watch at home is evolving over time. I don't know if you saw the recent race they had in New Zealand where they actually had those amazing 3D maps of the race course. Really something else. You're probably not there yet. That technology has not caught up to it here. For the person who's at home, who's an adventure racing fan, what will the off-site experience look like from a media perspective?
Yeah, we've got top-notch groups, both local and Rob Howard is part of one of our kind of core team, right, from the very get-go. So we're going to have his experience on that side in so many ways, and kind of giving updates alongside the race from that perspective. We also will definitely, of course, have, with the Adventure Enablers, the live dot watching is going to be a big part of and we're going to do something that I think is incredibly special. And again, I go back, I just keep boasting about this special place that I live in Bentonville in Northwest Arkansas, but we have an amazing community of people that just love to get involved with any type of sport, right? Outdoor recreation is everything. And so we have some really cool plans for physical gatherings that will play a role in that kind of dot watching mentality, not just at the beginning and the end of the race, but actually every single day during the race. So that's going to be kind of create that buzz. And I think that's one thing that a lot of racers are going to feel that is just really special about this race, is just how much this community is involved and how they're going to love to just let loose with them at the end of the race during our big festival we're going to have at the end to celebrate them.
I had this vision of there being like one of those blow up screens in the middle of town, and the course is projected up on that screen like for 5 straight days, and people could walk by and they could see who's there. And that's a free idea. Feel free to go with it. I won't charge you for that one.
World Cup watch parties, those kind of gathering spaces that are going to be live dot watching with commentary and kind of a daily recap that are both broadcasted live to the world, but also if you're here in Northwest Arkansas, you got a little community to kind of get updates and cheer everybody on with. So yeah, I'm not stealing your idea, but that's exactly what we're doing. Yeah.
The dark zone's free for the world. Take what you want and leave the rest behind. Very good. You've talked about the two of you working as partners on this, right? And Jason bringing all the experience you have with the racing you've done over the years, the adventure racing you've done, and Danny with your adventuring and your outdoor guiding and all of that. And just as adventure racing for adventure racers is the process of growing as a racer, it's a process of growing as a race director. When you decided to take this on as an undertaking, and now you hear, and I heard about it in April, right? April, May, or maybe even June might have been, it was announced, right? April, May, June was that it came alive. And now it's December and the race is this April. So it's a year-long process. What is different now in your perception of how the race should be prepared for versus what you thought it was going to be like 6-7 months ago? What's been your primary learning so far?
I think that as a team, we've done very well. I think that we have had challenges, encountered things to improve upon, and we've done that. I like the course. I think it's set nice. I think it will work well for the strongest athletes that are going to be there, as well as work well for the new expedition racers that are coming. And so I think it's a well thought out plan that we've all worked on very hard and had great success in planning it.
Yeah, I mean, I think my just complete focus is and something that I think was obvious of the need, but didn't know to what capacity until you really start getting into the logistics and details, is that plan B, C, D. And I keep kind of mentioning that the what ifs, especially this time of year in the Ozarks, is there's a lot of different reasons why, especially related to water, that we might have to have issues or kind of backup plans when it comes to the weather solutions and stuff. So, but other than that, I mean, I think I definitely, Jason and I have never been scared to ask questions, to get advice from the community or local racers or just even other event organizers. Right. And so that community has been exceptional and,
Very helpful.
yeah, but overall, I really think it's just that you don't even understand the levels of stress as a race director. Everybody can relate to it. Is that kind of plan B, that backup, that those what if scenarios.
Which I think I think adventure racers who become adventure race directors, I think they like that because they get to tap into the same excitement during a race, but on a much bigger scale. Because I will give you a Gatens guarantee. Write this down. It's now 5:10 p.m. on Friday, December 16th. Remember this. At some point during the race, the two of you are going to be like, what are we going to do? Like a road's going to be shut down. A team is going to ride off the map and you're going to have to figure it out while the race is going on. And guess what? That's welcome to adventure race directing, right? That's what happens. And that's cool because that's everybody who does that has to go through like that. And I think it's a great experience, and we're going to get you folks on not soon after the race ends, so you could do a bit of a decompression. We'll call it a therapy session in regards to how the race went for the two of you. We're assuming you'll still be talking. I like your odds. You mentioned the teams that are coming on. I saw that Vitarade is joining you for the race. I think that was announced this week.
Yeah, I think we can announce. I mean, we are at 30 teams, which is really, really exciting. We're going to post a team list. Actually, it should have been today. But by the time that people hear this, it should be posted on the website. So
gotcha. And so you're at 30 teams now. What's your upper limit? How many more could you take on?
We have said we're in between 35 and 40, to be honest. So we're closer to kind of capacity than we realized. That's something that we just have set as a goal to hit that 35. And then we had talked about a cap of 40. But that's the general consensus just for safety. And so for that kind of for our first year that's a number that we think we can definitely handle, but don't want to push anything to the extremes. But we are incredibly excited about the team list on everything from the amount of complete newbie type of expedition level teams to our podium is going to be exciting. That is something that I'm very excited for is the race for the podium.
Well, that was one of my questions was the breadth of the field. And it sounds like you have people who are walking into their first 5-day race. And if anybody wants to listen to an older episode, David Webster of Team ACDCAR did iTerra, and it was his first race ever. And it was a 5-day race and off he went, right? So there are teams that just, God bless them, dive into it. And there are teams that have tens, if hundreds of races behind them going into it. And so are you finding that there's a breadth across the entire field?
No, I mean, there are people that I've raced with for years that, they do well. And then there are those that want to do better, but they're all very, very good friends. I love them. Some of my best friends are adventure racers. And so some of the newbies that are coming are newbie to expedition racing, not newbie to adventure racing. So I'm excited for them. And of course, very excited for the top teams that are coming.
Obviously, a lot of teams are starting to sign up, starting to arrive. As you get to know them, and let's be honest, you're going to become their dads for the 5 days they're there, right? You're in charge of them. They're feeding, they're caring. You will be the ones who will nurse them to the finish line sometimes, like we talked about before. Tell us a bit about some of the more unique teams that are coming out.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
No, there's some local teams that are new to the expedition scene, and I am excited to see them come. Orange Lederhosen is one of the local Midwestern teams that's coming. And there's another team in the St. Louis area that Danny and I saw at the Castlewood Adventure Race a couple of weeks ago, and I kept giving them Expedition Ozark flyers. One of them really wants to go and wants to come, but the other one's like, I don't know. So I'm hoping that they come because they're a very, very good team. So yeah.
And these are people.
Yeah, we'll have to give it.
They're just diving right. It sounds like it's like Orange Lederhosen. Right? Sounds like they sound like a savage team to go get them. They're new. Absolutely. They're new to 5-day racing.
They're going to be, this will be their first expedition race. And so I'm excited for them. And yes.
Yeah, we have a team also that's Team Natural State, which is something that if you guys follow us on social media, you'll probably be able to see a lot about them. But a very exciting group that this was their first ever expedition race. When they signed up for this, they have never done a adventure race at all before. They're all different forms of athletes, but they're doing a few short races now to kind of prepare. But I know everybody on that team personally. They've all come together with some form of past history, either family or personally dealing with addiction, and have come together for that reason, and kind of using the power of outdoor recreation and adventure sports in general to kind of be one way to kind of combat that situation, and kind of racing in the spirit of bringing attention to that. And so we're extremely excited for them. We've been helping advice for them, and they actually have a coach that's kind of helping them out, and very, very exciting group. But that's the kind of stuff that makes this race very excited for. I mean, that's the stuff that is getting me just incredibly excited for April, is hearing stuff like that and just being able to see the diverse. And then, like I said, I mean, our podium is going to be incredible. That is something that I was a little bit unsure what that's going to look like when we first started this whole journey a year ago, but there is no doubt that it is going to be a super competitive podium.
But that's the great thing about adventure racing, right? Like you're going to 30 teams, 35 teams, 40 teams, whatever it is. You have the Orange Lederhosen, you have Team Natural State in there. Dramatic, very powerful story, and credit to them for as they manage their addiction issues, and the fact that they're using adventure racing as a venue to sort of address that and talk about that. That alongside them is going to be some of the best adventure race teams in the world, right? And you're going to shoot that gun off, right? Bang, and they're going to leave. And every single one of those human beings is going to have complete access to that same experience. And once they leave there, it's up to them to figure it out. But regardless, they're still going to have the opportunity to do the best they can with what they have. And that's the real beauty of adventure racing, right? The fact that it's a testing ground. Go ahead, Jason.
No, it is. Absolutely. It's that testing ground. You know, with adventure racing, you're going to find adversity. There is going to be a day when you're like, oh man, that really hurts. Or maybe I should have eaten more in the past 5 hours. And so you'll find that adversity and you have to work through it. And so I think that is the beauty of adventure racing. It's really, working through it, teamwork, everybody helping each other is a big component.
So we have the leader.
Just keep one foot in the other.
Just keep going, right? Just keep moving forward.
Yeah.
So we got the Lederhosen on one hand, we have Team Natural State on the other. Anybody else jumping out at you?
Really excited for Expedition Canada. Natalie and her team are coming down. We also have Bend. Bend Racing is going to be present, which is another one of those teams that we're obviously thinking could be up at the top. We'll kind of submit it, and we're going to keep doing kind of more secret announcements here as we go. But incredibly excited to say, as of now, we have 8 different countries that we represent at a race, which is and very exciting thing for us is 8 different countries. We had a goal we broke into 3 different demographic groups, and the class 1, class 2, class 3 individual or teams, right? And our goal was to be evenly distributed between all 3 of those, and we're really right at that. I'm very personally excited for that for so many different reasons. And this is, the goal of this race. Literally, if there's one goal of mine more than this, after safety and kind of, those kind of more obvious things, is just to showcase this unbelievable place that we have in the Ozarks. It's overlooked in so many ways for lots of obvious reasons, but especially this kind of like post-COVID world that we're in with more regional tourism and what we're investing in our trails and our outdoor recreation, our natural spaces here. And that means that we want to have a diverse set of teams across the board. And there are definitely teams on here that are just going to be here to just exceed their own backyard, that have never seen it from this perspective.
When you look at America as a country, there's a variety of different places in which races are held, right? We see the Northeast, we see the West, we see Florida, we see parts of Texas. And I think what you're saying is that this is a part of the country that for various reasons has not really received the attention that it deserves based upon the quality of everything there, the terrain, the water, the mountain bike trails, the gravel roads. And what you're saying is that this casts a big spotlight on a really nice part of the country.
It is, sure. Yeah. There's nothing like us between the Rockies and the Appalachians. I said that. I always say that there really is. I mean, the areas that we're going to be seeing, I think, will rival anything you could imagine between the state of Colorado and Tennessee, and rival those places themselves.
If someone's sitting home right now and if they're on the fence, when are you taking signups until? Up until the day before the race, they could show up and pay their money down on early April. But if someone were to consider, someone listens to this and says, something, I'm free in April. I've gone to the website and I want to give it a go and I'm going to get a team. When do you want to hear by? What is your upper limit to that?
Yeah, we are pretty much imagining a closing of reservations on February 15th. Okay. So 6 weeks before the race. But I will be honest, I really feel like we're going to hit our capacity, gotcha. Especially with this help from you here and this exposure and the amount of teams I'm fielding questions for that are right there about to, to make the choice. And I do think we will hit capacity. That's kind of knock on wood situation. But I do think that, in the month of February, will fill, if not before. Have
you disclosed yet? And if it's not out there, don't need to say it. How many stages you think the race will be? Or is that still a state secret?
Such a secret.
Okay. Have you disclosed? Well, we want to be fair to the racers. Have you disclosed? Obviously, adventure racing has three main disciplines, right? There's a water-based discipline. There's a bike of some sort, mountain bike usually, and there's trekking of some sort. Have you disclosed any additional disciplines that racers should expect?
We will have a rope section. There will be no certifications needed for that or any proof, and it'll be manned. I think we can disclose that. It'll be a safety. It's not a safety concern. And we will have what we would be considering a caving section. But again, as you alluded to at the beginning, it is it and maybe both situations are incredibly fun situations and environments versus incredibly tight spaces type of mentality.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's it's amazing how for many adventure racers, present company included, caving is the one thing that keeps many of us awake at night thinking about races we're going to have to do. Jason, tossing it back over to you a little bit with the breadth of your race experience and the things that you've done over the years. What are you going to say to a team day 2.5? They're newer to the sport. They're nuked, right? They've been awake for 40 hours and they're struggling. What is your in transition pep talk going to be to them?
I'm going to tell them that they're doing a great job, that they probably need to eat and they probably need a nap, and get some rest, get some food, and regroup, and make your plan on how you're going to move forward and what things you guys need to accomplish to get to the next checkpoint, the next transition area. Encouragement, communication, the team working together is a big component to all of it. And so, of course, we want to grow the sport. We want more people adventure racing. It's a wonderful sport. It's something I love. I've a lot of enjoyment out of it over the years, and I want to pass that on to others.
And Danny, as someone who has AR experience and a fair amount of it, but as someone who also has worked in guide services, things like that, when groups, when teams, when they come together and when they fall apart, what's usually the dynamic that drives that?
Yeah, I think it's just, and this, you're right. It definitely translates to guiding and adventure racing in so many ways, is just kind of being very, before the race even starts, being incredibly transparent and communicative of your expectations as a team and individually, so that you're going in knowing what that looks like. And the best way to put it is that there's absolutely no way that a team of four is going to have 4 people at their low at the same time or their high at the same time. And I think that's one of the most special things about adventure racing in general. And I think that's why I love guided group experiences, is because it's about that community. It's about that social component to it, that you're doing this together. And then you just have that desire to not let down anybody, right? You're part of this kind of unit that's going to help each other out through it. But I think overall, if I were to give one piece of advice, is just go in with those same expectations. And we always talk about it, especially for this race, is you're a completer, you're a competitor, or you're a racer, right? And those three different mentalities are incredibly different expectations when it comes to when you're hitting your lows as a team, and just but help each other out, because you're going to need it. I think this is one of the most special things, is that like a even 100-mile gravel ride, which is still popular on here, is there might be some people that aren't going to hit a low and something like that, but over 5 days you're going to hit a low, and you're going to need your team to take care of you. So you do the reverse of that, and that's something that Jason does exceptionally well. And so something I've got to learn from is, he's brought me to where I am in this sport, is just being open, communicating, and at the end of the day, it's just about having an amazing time. And over 5 days, your kind of short little setbacks are not as big of a deal over a 5-day race.
Gotcha. If somebody wanted to find Expedition Ozark on the internets, where would they look? What are all of your handles? What are all the socials? Where are you located?
We're at expeditionozark.com. I think we have a very, very strong presence on Facebook and Instagram as well. But yeah, expeditionozark.com should be most of the information there. And then if you contact us through Facebook message, email through the website, the contact forms on the website, you're gonna get me. And thank you to everybody in advance and everybody in the future that has been incredibly patient with my response time. I'm trying to get to them as much as we can, but yeah, overall, it's check out. We try to post on Facebook a lot and Instagram as well, to kind of give a little bit of just pictures about the environment that we have here. Because again, I think when you hear, like you said, Florida, or you hear Bend, Oregon, the general population knows more about what those two geographies are all about, right? And those landscapes are all about. So a lot of people might not know the amount of caves that we have here. It would be absolutely incredible for me to ever conceive of an adventure race in the Ozarks that doesn't have caving, just because of how many caves we have here. And that's one of the main things we're known for.
I'm going to speak once again for the beginner here. If someone's at home and they're on the fence about this, you're encouraging them to reach out to you directly to get a sense for the race itself, the sense for just getting some feedback from you, because that very often that individual experience might be the decider for someone. They may have very specific questions about, like, what if I sign up, and what happens if at day 3 I fall apart, and what do we do? Are you available to them for all those explanations?
Absolutely. Both of us. I'm fielding most of those questions, and Jason, and right on to Jason if they kind of are more on the technical side of things. And so Jason said it best, and I'll just kind of mock that. The entire goal here is to get more people into the sport and showcase what a beautiful place we have.
Thank you to Jason and Danny for joining us on The Dark Zone. If you enjoyed this episode, please head over to the streaming platform of your choice and leave a review. The best way to spread the word about The Dark Zone is to do exactly that. We're always open to your thoughts, ideas, and suggestions. Brian at artdarkzone.com. Once again, Brian at artdarkzone.com. Many thanks to the team at Expedition Ozark. Be sure to check them out on all the socials. They did a great job on today's episode. Be sure to think about that race, and if necessary, learn more about it and dive right in.